Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't think we're on. Anyway.
Who's doing sound?
Larry.
Larry's invisible.
Here's Larry.
Keep your hands on it.
Good morning. There we go. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley. My name is Evan Yannick, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. For those of you who may be new to Unitarian Universalism, ours is a non-judgmental religious home that will accept and support you wherever you may be in your life's journey. Unitarian Universalism is composed of diverse communities operating without a common belief about God, the universe, and death. Instead of a creed, we share a spirit and vision of radical inclusivity, individual agency, and social justice. This is a safe space to stand out, stand up, and change your mind, particularly during life's transitions. We embrace personal discovery and growth through learning, engagement, and service. Our only doctrine is love. If you'd like, you can take a look at our mission for the UUCSB on the front page of the Order of Service. And we make it a tradition to welcome visitors and guests who may be here for the first or second time to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from so we can welcome you after the service. Do we have any visitors or guests on this side? Yeah.
This is Maureen. Oh, first of all, I'm David Ben. I'm Robbie's project. And she and Maureen Hewitt have been friends since about 1968, and their project is, guess what?
You.
ERA.
ERA.
She has that because of that. So this is Maureen Hewitt, and she now lives around Chicago, but she lived for many years in Baton Rouge as an editor and as a person helping, I don't know the exact name, but you say, what was your position with foreign students at LSU?
I was the manager for the International Cultural Center. It was my luck to be such for 16 years with them. That was my first retirement.
She was excellent and much beloved.
Welcome. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ross. I was here last week. I'm from Philadelphia, but I brought my dad with me. He's in visiting for the weekend, and he's from the Detroit metro area.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome back. Any other visitors on this side? Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ann, and I'm from Weaverville, and this is my first time here. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome.
How about over here? No, we got the home crowd on this side. If you would like to stay in contact with us, we have a little white card that we have in the back of the pews or in the foyer that you're welcome to fill out to receive our newsletters and understand what is going on at UUCSB. After you fill it out, you can either drop it in the collection plate or leave it in the foyer as well. I want to make one announcement. We have, for the past 4 or 5 weeks since we started coming back to church, been doing a live stream on YouTube. And for anyone who has actually viewed that live stream, it is not an exceptional performance because of the Wi-Fi in this space and the upload speeds. So this message is actually for the people who may be watching online. Next week, we're not going to do it live streamed. We're going to record it in the service and then post it after the service. So it's a much better presentation And then when we get those two comparisons, we'll get some feedback and see how people like it. If they're okay waiting an hour or two for the post-recorded service, or if they are okay hearing not great service, but it's live and they get to be along with us. So look for communications on that in this coming week. Last point of note, as always, please silence your cell phones or any noisemakers and let our service begin.
Good morning. Our chalice lighting will be done by Diane Graham. As we hear these words of Albert Schweitzer, it's in your hymnal number 447. At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Thank you. And our opening words are also in the hymnal number 496. Excuse me. From arrogance, pompousness, and from thinking ourselves more important than we are, may some saving sense of humor liberate us. For allowing ourselves to ridicule the faith of others, may we be forgiven. For making war and calling it peace, special privilege and calling it justice, indifference and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable while good is impossible, may we stand corrected. God of our mixed up, tragic, aspiring, doubting, and insurgent lives, help us to be as good in our hearts as we have always wanted to be. Amen.
Amen.
Now please join in singing our opening hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. I'm sorry.
Standing up.
Standing up, please.
Nurtured in love and consciously formed, the body and spirit. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit, knowing it all, no more the moon, fed by the sun, winter to spring, and summer to fall, the waters of love, it's only one. Gather in peace,
Now let us join together in responsive reading number 587, a litany for survival. Number 587. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone.
For those of us who cannot indulge passionate dreams of choice.
For those of us who are imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk.
Provide this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hope to silence us.
For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive.
And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning.
And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed.
But when we are silent, we are still afraid.
So it is better to speak, remembering.
We were never meant to survive.
This is the time when we as a community share our joyful events and those of concern as members of our extended UU family. So as you wish, please let us all share in your joys and concerns.
Good morning. I'm Mary Sloyanova, and last week I told you about crashing my car and how sad I was, but I was grateful that I was not hurt, and I was filled with gratitude. This week, I want to tell you the rest of the story. Yesterday, we found a car on the internet, and my son and I jumped in his car and drove 5 hours to Atlanta, to this dinky little car lot in a seedy part of Atlanta. There was my car. And not only is it exactly like my car that was crashed, a car ferry came and touched it, and the cracked taillights are gone, and the dents and the dings and the bumps. It's almost pristine for a 15-year-old car. And you might say, Mary, how shallow of you to be so enamored with metal in a car. But I am. I'm sitting, it feels like it's hugging me. And I really am so very, very grateful to have a car again.
Yeah, man.
And so that's the rest of the story.
And it's out in the parking lot.
Good morning, I'm Deb Bingle, and I would like to share 3 concerns and just one candle. First, for my very new grandson, his name is Shy, which means gift. And he's beautiful and only 3 months old. And he has spent a lot of his young life in the hospital. First, his little digestive system doesn't work very well. They used to call it colic, I think. It's now GERD, and he's taking medication for it. But recently, he's been having what looks like seizure activity. And it's not showing up on EEG, and they don't really know what's happening. So just send him your good wishes and thoughts, please. Second, Anna asked me to just ask you all to hold Sandra in your thoughts and good wishes. She's hoping not to have to postpone her surgery due to COVID and all that's happening. So just hold that in your thoughts. And lastly, for Anna, just because I know many of you know that she's not been feeling well, and up and down and in and out and still struggling with it a little bit. And I'm looking at Ray because I hope she's doing better today. Good. All right. Thank you.
And today is Deb's birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Deb. Happy birthday to you.
Good morning, I'm Larry Perlman. I had two joys and a sorrow, or a concern when they came up here, but a third joy. Deb, enjoy it because you only turned 32 once. My first joy is this was the first year that the Black Mountain Sourwood Festival invited Asheville Storytelling Circle to provide storytellers as part of the entertainment. And I was one of those and had a wonderful time yesterday telling stories, including one about my car. There, so, concern, many of you have not seen for a long time our friend Jennifer Atkinson, primarily because of this. And she's gotten to a point now where she really needs greater care than she's been able to get living on her own. So, she needs to move into a skilled nursing facility. So I have some concern about how that transition is going to go. And I have a joy that a bed opened up, and because sometimes, as many of you know, you have to wait for months for a place to open up. So Monday is the day that we anticipate moving Jennifer into, what's the name of the place now? Mountain Ridge.
Yes.
Yeah. So hold that in your heart and hope that transition goes well. Thank you.
My name is Bill, and I have a profound joy. Not only do I want to see your car, Mary, but I want to get its autograph.
For those of you who did not wish to share your joys and concerns, we hold you in our hearts. Please note a small correction in our order of service. We are going to ask Reverend Jones to do the meditation and prayer after I introduce him. And now for the offertory. Oh, there's another hymn in there, 121? Okay, I'm sorry.
Generations of people so bold. Come, brothers and sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may He create peace. Just a shadow down like waters, beside the never-flowing stream. Mantles of praises, His Son from the spirits, once faith and once weak. Bells of righteousness, ever people, go out and go back, like people we see. Come, their sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may men create peace with us, and roll down with fires, beside the ever-flowing stream.
And this is the time when we ask you to share with us your generosity. As you know, your contributions to our congregation are put to good use in our community, and especially during this pandemic. In the words of Edward Hale, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, the Reverend Dr. Neil Jones. He is a psychologist at the Pisgah Institute in Asheville. He was born and raised in North Carolina and earned his BA from Wake Forest University and his Master's of Divinity from Southeastern Seminary, and also a PSYD. Is that what I call it? SADI, okay, from Baylor University. He has served as the minister of 5 congregations in North and South Carolina, Texas, and Pennsylvania. Most recently, he served at the Mainline Unitarian Church near Philadelphia and at the UU congregation of Columbia, South Carolina. He also serves as chair of the National Board of Trustees of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. That caught our attention at my house, and talked to Neil about possibly coming back to speak on the separation of church and state. He teaches and practices a spirituality of personal wholeness, relational respect, and social justice. Neil?
Thank you, Robbie, and thank you, congregation, in person and online, for having me as your guest today. And Evan, I loved your description of this congregation. I think it's the most comprehensive description of Unitarian Universalist congregation I've ever heard of. I wish you would share that.
I stole it from Deb. That was Deb's words.
So what I'd like to do for our meditation is have a brief read and then give us a full minute of silence to ponder these words. I'll be reading a short passage from historian Howard Zinn, who wrote A People's History of the United States. To be hopeful in bad times, he writes, is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, when people behave magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. I invite you to close your eyes and we'll take a full minute of silence to ponder these words, and I'll end our silence with amen. Amen. Sermon come next. If the insurrection at our nation's capital on January 6th accomplished anything, it vividly reminded us of the fragility of democracy. Now, we had been warned at the beginning by one of our founders, who also happens to be a Unitarian. In addition to being a leader of the revolution and our first vice president and our second president, John Adams was also a student of history. Though he helped to establish our American democracy, his reading of history taught him the precariousness of democracy. Remember, he warned his compatriots, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. It is vain to say that democracy is less vain, less proud, less selfish, less ambitious, or less avaricious than aristocracy or monarchy. It is not true, in fact, and nowhere appears in history. Those passions are the same for all persons, under all forms of government, and when unchecked, produce the same effects of fraud, violence, and cruelty. Sobering words from one of our founders. In fact, based on his study of history, Adams estimated that on average, democracy only lasts about 250 years, which means that our American version of democratic government doesn't have much longer to survive. And as we survey our civic landscape, it appears that Adams' prophecy may be coming true. Americans are increasingly losing their faith in our government, and maybe for good reason. It seems either unwilling or unable to address the pressing problems of our time. Unprecedented income inequality, stagnant wages, the evisceration of the middle class, crumbling infrastructure, climate change, a pandemic, an epidemic of gun violence, decreasing life expectancy. Need I go on? Now, because I'm something of a political junkie, it's tempting to veer off into a discussion of how big money is poisoning our political system, or how gerrymandering is rigging our political system. But instead, I want to take a look at the bigger picture. To put this in spiritual terms, I would put it this way. We are replacing a we culture with a me culture. We no longer believe in the great idea of society itself. Or as Margaret Thatcher put it a few years ago, there's no such thing as society, only a collection of individuals. We're increasingly opposed to the idea of living together in society in which we invest in the common good. The core of democracy is about treating each person as having equal worth. It's choosing what is best for everyone, not just yourself. It's about recognizing a common humanity, a common purpose, and a common destiny. However, the public sphere is being consumed by private interest. Now, democracy is like a garden. It must continually be tended and nurtured, otherwise it will die. When I was growing up in the 60s and 70s in a small town in eastern North Carolina, all of us, kids from the richest families and the poorest families, black kids and white kids, we attended the same public schools, read books at the same public library, played in the same public park, traveled the same public roads and highways, provided the same public protection, police protection and fire protection, and were educated at the same public universities. Despite our varied family incomes and backgrounds, we share common institutions, common values, and a common culture. Yet increasingly, our world is divided between those who believe in society and those who believe and live a kind of tribalism characterized by hostility, a violence, a rage, which is tearing apart our social fabric. Your kid attends schools without books, that's okay. My kid's getting a quality education. You don't have health insurance, that's okay. I do. Your minimum wage job doesn't allow you to support yourself, that's okay. I'm making a killing. That's not democratic. That's sociopathic. All of us here are all too aware of the political polarization between so-called liberals and so-called conservatives. Also, many of us are caught up in it. We are aware of how social media makes matters worse by creating echo chambers, feeding us beliefs we already believe, interacting only with like-minded people, and keeping out ideas with which we don't agree and people with whom we have little in common. But the great divide in the body politic goes way beyond the cyber world. Not only do liberals and conservatives differ politically, but we increasingly live separately. As never before, liberals and conservatives are less likely to marry or have friends or even neighbors from the other end of the political spectrum. The designation of red states and blue states is based on this reality, but our preferences are much more local than that. Liberals and conservatives systematically favor different kinds of physical environments. Liberals tend to prefer walkable and ethnically diverse communities, while conservatives gravitate toward areas with larger houses and more private land. Liberals and conservatives tend to decorate their homes differently. Clocks and flags for conservatives, art and maps for liberals. Conservatives tend to favor neater, more orderly workspaces, while liberals tend to work in offices that are less organized and more colorful. Liberals and conservatives actually shop at different businesses, including grocery stores and banks. For instance, liberals are more likely to shop at Target, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods. Conservatives at Walmart and Sam's Club. They even tend to buy different brands of similar products. Liberals are more likely to buy Rolling Stone magazine. Conservatives, Southern Living. Liberals are more likely to buy a Honda. Conservatives, a GMC. Liberals, a Cuisinart coffee maker. Conservatives, a Keurig. Liberals buy the store brand pain reliever. Conservatives Bayer aspirin. Liberals buy combat bug spray. Conservatives Black Flag. Liberals tend to buy moist pet food. Conservatives dry. I'm not making any of this up. It's supported by social statistics. In ways more unconscious than conscious, more and more of our personal choices and characteristics express our partisan allegiances. Carrying a tote bag, wearing yoga pants, shopping at Walmart, driving a pickup, are ways of signaling one's tribal membership. As a nation, we are living in separate political, social, and even physical worlds, each becoming more homogeneous within our tribes and more increasingly hostile to the other tribe. Well, that's the bad news, which seems to be fulfilling John Adams' prophecy about the fate of democracy. But I want to share with you this morning some good news of how we might save our democracy. And it's grounded in something we youth can confidently put our faith in science, in biology, to be precise. I'm relying on the research of Nicholas Christakis, who teaches social and natural science at Yale. He's published a book entitled Blueprint: The Evolutionary Origins of a Good Society, in which he makes the case that natural selection has genetically hardwired us for kindness, love, and cooperation, because these are the traits that have promoted the survival of our species. In other words, we carry within our genetic code the blueprint, hence the title of his book, for making a good society. Now, Christakis began thinking about this topic more than 25 years ago as a hospice doctor. Death and grief unite us like nothing else, he observes. I've held the hands of countless dying people from all sorts of backgrounds, and I don't think I've met a single person who didn't share the exact same aspirations at the end of life: to make amends for mistakes, to be close to loved ones, to tell here's a horse story to someone who will listen, and to die free of pain. The desire for social connection is so deep that it is here with us to the end. Now, his observations counter the typical interpretation of Darwin's survival of the fittest, which emphasizes competition over cooperation. It also counters the current polarization between conservatives and liberals, which begs the question of whether a common American identity is feasible or even desirable anymore. Can you love people in your tribe without hating everyone else? That's the question we must wrestle with if we're going to save our democracy. According to Christakis' research, we arrive in this world with a genetic blueprint which affords us the capacity for love and friendship, allowing us to work together to achieve common goals and minimize hostility and violence. Now, Christakis has a fascination with shipwrecks because he believes they tell us a lot about how societies come into being and how they fall from grace. During the period of European exploration up to the era of modern navigation, there have been over 8,000 shipwrecks. And in the great majority of these, everyone on board went down to a watery grave. The ones that interested Christakis were those that survived, made landfall, set up camp, usually as a result of good leadership. An intriguing case study is provided by two shipwrecks which occurred at the same time on opposite ends of the same island in the Pacific in 1864. The case is practically a social experiment of how social orders work. One crew was led by a captain who seemed mostly interested in his own survival. Landing on a rocky beach, the crew had no shoes, a few clothes, a pencil, and some matches. Leaving one weaker man to die, they set out across the island. Along the way, they abandoned other men who were injured or too weak to go on. One man was eaten. 3 were eventually rescued, including the captain. All the lower ranked seamen died. Now, men from the other ship on the other side of the island stuck together and worked collaboratively from the beginning. Despite some disagreements, there was tremendous loyalty to the group. The captain had been sick when the ship foundered, but the men refused to abandon him and took him along with them on shore. Under his guidance, they built a cabin with nails they forged themselves. Using a Roman recipe, the captain made concrete from seashells and sand. He also crafted chess pieces, dominoes, and a pack of cards, which they had to discard because one of the crew was a sore loser who started fights. As they were from different nations, they taught each other foreign languages and math. According to the captain's log, their impromptu school equalized them. He writes, "We were alternatively the teacher and the student. We achieved a perfect equality among us." The captain proposed that the men vote and choose a head of the family. His duty, specified the captain, would be to maintain order and harmony with gentleness and firmness. The men elected the sore loser at cards, and he remained in this position for the 2 years their ordeal. He, the captain, and a third man set sail in a repaired dinghy and made it all the way to New Zealand. And then they turned right around and went back to the island to rescue the men who trusted them to return. No group can survive without trust. No congregation can survive without trust. No country can survive without trust in each other, knowing that we will make some mistakes and have some mutinies along the way. But you cannot make it unless you can trust people you barely know. This crew, relying on mutual trust, respect, and cooperation, brought into being a good society. Now, Christakis concedes that evolution has endowed us with a parallel propensity for animosity and violence, which contribute to the collapse of the social order. But living socially, democratically, is the blueprint for organizing a successful society. And we have that genetic blueprint for kindness, altruism, and friendship within us. That's the good news. The spiritual challenge for our democracy is to cultivate and reinforce and nurture this capacity, remembering that the human species has advanced more through cooperation than competition. My grandparents, who were dirt farmers in rural North Carolina, survived the Great Depression, not by living a philosophy of live and let live, but of live and help live. They helped their neighbors bring in the crops, and their neighbors helped them do the same. They delivered one another's babies. When a neighbor got sick, they took turns sitting by the bedside. When there was a death, they brought food to the rest of the family. They washed the body of the deceased. They dug the grave. And they sat up all night with the corpse, a silent vigil to the loneliness of death. I once asked my grandfather why he would sit up all night with a dead person, knowing he had to work the next day? He replied, because it's the thing we did. It's the thing we did. If we live simply for me and mine, we end up living a law of the jungle, a war of all against all. And a free market of wolves becomes the slaughter of lambs. But if we take the spiritual journey from me to we can create a civilization. And what is civilization? It's a web of connections, joining people to families, friends, communities, and country, rooted in a recognition of the whole and a companionship with others. Civilization is not natural. It doesn't happen automatically. If it happens, we make it happen. It's the thing we do. An honored and stable system of laws in which no person is above the law. Safe streets, secure pensions for workers, quality schools for children, all part of the bargain we strike together for civilization. Why do the young die in battle for their country? Why do old people plant trees they will never sit under? Why do we pay taxes for schools we will never attend? Because we're all part of the big, beautiful aspiration expressed in the preamble to the Constitution as we the people. All of us, wherever we're going together. This is it. There is no planet B. There is no alternative. We are all in this together. You, me, us, we, the people. Amen. Invite you to closing words come from poet A.M. Thomas. Do not let the world make you hard. Do not let pain make you hate. Do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness. Take pride that even though the rest of the world may disagree, you still believe it to be a beautiful place.
Amen.